Okay, so today I have a bit of a different video for you guys. A lot of the time folks ask me, for purchase advice, and I realize that there are so many misconceptions about how to even research headphones to buy. I sort of look back at, like when I first started, all those years ago, what would my advice be to my younger self? Make better life choices. That's probably where I'd start. But given that we're here now, that's what today's video is going to be about. So let's get started. So as usual, all these videos are made possible by headphones.com. If you like what we're doing here and you want to support us, remember to subscribe to the channel here, but also consider checking out headphones.com. And it's also where we publish all of our written content along with, educational deep dives on all of this stuff. Okay, let's get right into it. And my first thing to avoid when researching headphones is avoid considering only the products that are in the maximum price bracket that you can afford, especially if you are considering spending a lot of money on headphones. So if the maximum you can afford is $1,000, don't ignore the stuff that is at $500, is at $200. People have this sort of default assumption that you get what you pay for, and then they approach it like, oh, I can spend $1,000 on headphones. I'd like to get something really nice, thinking that no matter what they get at $1,000, it's going to be by default better than the stuff that's at $500. That might be true in some cases. It might be true that, what you can find at $1,000 is better than, what you may have considered at $500, but it might not be. So don't ignore the stuff that is cheaper than the maximum you can spend, because there's a good chance that it can suit your preferences just as well, or potentially even better. All right, number 2. Don't commit the sunk cost fallacy. And I see this all the time still for some reason, where there's this age-old nugget of wisdom that you're supposed to spend a proportional amount on your DAC and your amplifier as you do on your headphones. That is dumb. Do not do that. I'm not even going to get into the whole do DACs and amps matter thing. My point is more that you can get stuff that is going to get you what all of the performance that you need out of your headphones. You can get that stuff these days at fairly inexpensive price tags. And actually, I'm going to recommend folks check out a video by Mark Ryan over at Super Review. He did a ranking list for the things that matter. And this is stuff that for the most part, I quite agree with. So I would just echo that sentiment here. If at some point later on down the road, you're like, I would like to see what this whole tube amplifier thing is all about. Sure, but you don't need to do that. Consider the power requirements of the headphones that you have or the ones you're thinking about buying, and then calibrate your purchase decision towards a piece of source equipment accordingly if you need one at all. There's a very good chance that whatever you have is already going to be good enough. All right, point number 3, and that is to disregard any of the information out there that is basically giving every headphone a 9 out of 10 or the top 10 lists on all those various different listicle websites that are just, pumping out essentially nonsense. It's fairly obvious when you see it, and it is worth considering what the criticism is for something if it is on your radar as something you might consider purchasing. All right, point number 4, be very careful about manufacturer or brand marketing copy. Yes, the driver is the thing that makes the sound. Yes, the driver is critically important, but what you get from a manufacturer that's likely designed to tell you a compelling story about what makes their product better than everybody else's. You can have the fanciest materials in the world. You can have the most elaborate driver story that is genuinely doing the thing that the manufacturer says it does, but it can still have a horrible frequency response. It can still be tuned, horrifically. And this seems obvious, but I can't tell you how many people internalize this stuff, even like subconsciously, right? Like they let that lead or influence their purchase decision regardless. So I'm just telling you guys, be cautious of that stuff. Be aware that that is meant to make you feel that their products are special, even if what they're telling you is true, but that is not sufficient to tell you how the product actually performs. All right, point number 5. This is probably the most important one. Don't get sucked into information silos. And I say this with the full recognition that a lot of you folks are watching me right now, and this is potentially an information silo. Make sure you get information from more than one source. Watch our videos, yes, but also check out what other reviewers are doing. But don't get hung up on cults of personality or singular perspectives, because preferences and perspectives can vary. And as an example, even for the folks who we have on our team, we regularly disagree about whether or not a product is good. Now, point number 6 is also related to this, and it's that you shouldn't base your purchase decision just on measurements. So don't base it solely on what you see on a graph. And there are a number of reasons for this. But first and foremost, not all measurements are equally reliable or equally predictive. What do I mean by this? Well, not all measurement rigs are the same. There's a ton of variation in the measurement equipment that exists. You have industry standard equipment like the Brüel & Kjær 5 and 2.8. You have the Gross systems as well, like the 43AG or the 45CA. And then you have clones of the latter that exist, which has propagated more so in the IEM communities. The clone systems are more useful than the next tier down, which would be the mini DSP ears, which is not at all accurate or reliable, even for comparison reasons. When you're looking at a graph, not only do you need to know whether or not that graph is done on industry standard equipment, but also within the industry standard equipment, you have different types, and you also need to have a sense of what the ear being used is, and this is relevant especially for the clone rigs. And you also need to know what the target is that the reviewer is using. And this is where it just becomes so confusing for people, especially if you're coming at this cold, you have no sense of what's going on with any of this. Don't just assume that the targets that are being used are methodologically sound, because many of them are not. Shots fired. And unfortunately, we live in an era where you constantly see graphs being posted with no data or no information on any of these things. So the point there is to be careful about making purchases on measurements alone for those reasons, but also you need to get a sense of how something actually sounds to a human being as well, because headphone behavior varies from head to head, and when you get the measurement, you're seeing a picture of that measurement done at the eardrum of the rig that it was taken on. You're not getting a sense of how that translates to the sort of psychoacoustic system of a real person. So it is worth having both of those things. And I say this also with respect to, like a lot of folks will say, oh, but this matches the Harman target, therefore I can be confident in the purchase. That is also a mistake worth avoiding. And there are actually a number of reasons for that. The biggest would be that the Harman target is smooth to 1/2 octave, measurements are not, and your whole hearing apparatus, your anatomy, how your brain expects sound to propagate at your eardrum based on the physical impacts of your head and ears and torso, that's also not smooth to 1/2 octave. So use the Harman target as a guideline if you want to use it, right? That's fine to use it as a guideline, but don't treat it as the sole qualifier of this is a good product. There is more to sound quality than just target adherence. In fact, there is more to measurements than just target adherence, but that is a topic for another time. All right, the next point, and I've entirely forgotten which one I'm at now, 7-ish. Don't buy without considering the measurements. So despite what I just said, it would be incredibly foolish to make a purchase decision on a headphone if you had no idea what its frequency response was, if you had no sense of how it measured. At the very least, you can use a measurement as a disqualifier, but more importantly, if you're not considering the measurements at all, you are at the mercy of what some person online said. You are at the mercy of, you just have to trust whatever they say. We used to take a person's report at face value and assume that they're telling the truth, that they know what they're talking about, that they have actually compared this to other things and aren't just being primed by purchase justification because they bought it. There's so much that goes into that. Not only do you not know anything about people online, but you also don't know what their preferences are. You could have totally different preferences. So make sure you also consider how things measure, because at the very least, it can give you two things. It can disqualify products that are weird in so many ways that you might not prefer, but also it can give you a sense of the relative balance of bass, mids, and treble, and you can really get a sense of whether or not something is the kind of product that might be right for you, okay? And the next point is related to this. Don't play the authority game. So the point here is consider the content of what's being said, not the way in which it is being expressed. Because for whatever reason, this hobby seems to get people to have a ton of false confidence. You probably know somebody who, feels themselves to be an authority on something to do with audio, and they speak with such confidence about, what's going on. And I want to caution everybody not to play that game. This is part of the madness. And I'm saying this as a way for you to apply that same scrutiny to me and us and whatever we're doing here. All right, point number 9, avoid the cope. This one is a little bit controversial. So online forums like HeadFi and other forums like our forum as well, these are great places for the community to get together and share their enthusiasm for this hobby, the products that they're enjoying, what they're listening to, all this kind of stuff. But it's really important to remember, every single forum thread on a product on HeadFi has purchase justification in it. It has somebody saying, this is the best product and better than all these other products that are of similar price, right? Or even, that are more expensive. And I don't really blame them. Everybody wants the thing that they spent money on to be respected by others, well received by others, but it turns into support groups for product owners. Take the recommendations from people in product threads with a grain of salt. Recognize that there is some context to that. All right, point number 10, don't buy on strength of brand alone. And this is a big one. I was just talking to somebody not that long ago who said, Sennheiser is the best. They always make the best stuff. I will always buy Sennheiser products, that sort of thing. And I thought to myself, I guess you haven't heard the HT820, have you? It is very rare to come across a brand. I'm not even aware of a brand that I can think of right now that hasn't put out something that's been bad. And certainly you don't know necessarily if everything that they put out is going to be exactly to your preference. So these brands are deserving of respect. They put out amazing products that many of us love, but don't think that just because a brand has put out an amazing product before that that the next thing that they put out is going to be also amazing and you're going to buy it because it's from that brand, right? So just ensure that you're considering the product, not the brand. But that does it for the things that I wish that I could tell my younger self. But I have a bonus one for you guys, and it's to make sure that you are buying from somewhere that has a reasonable return policy. And related to that is make sure you are confident in their ability to test products if you are buying open box headphones. So obviously buy from where it is convenient for you to buy from, but I would caution you about buying from places like Amazon, where you don't know if what you're gonna get has been actually thoroughly put through its paces to ensure that it's working, or even that it's the right product, or even that it's a headphone. I hope this has been helpful for you guys. Let me know in the comments below if you guys have any additional mistakes to avoid or things that you think people are regularly confused about. Like, I think the biggest confusion that people have is like, oh, it doesn't make sense for me to get nice headphones because I just listen to Spotify. I keep seeing that. What is that? But that does it for this video. You can find me in our Discord, linked below. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.